All right. I'm going to be going over stability movements, which are associated to stability. We don't want to confuse this with solidity movements. Those are different. Stability movements are meant to help regulate stability in the body. If you find yourself out in the field and you're doing all sorts of active state movements, formulations, things like that, you're going to find that your intolerance is going to build, exposure is going to build, residual is going to build, and as you utilize these things in different ways, you're going to incur more instability. Instability just feels like an exasperational stance from the body. It's just you're shaky, can't quite catch your breath, low blood sugar, possibly. You can't generate essence as potently as before. You don't feel as though any of your physical movements are as effective as they were. If any of you out there lift weights and you tend to lift to failure, you understand what I mean. You don't have the ability to go on. You just doesn't want to move the way you want it to. It's not quite to that degree of physicality. Instabilities are more sub-physical, you know, they're like, it's more of a feeling. Some traits of instability are definitely directly physical, such as that low blood sugar, but that's not like the definable instability. There are many different instabilities that you're going to deal with in the field, and an instability or a stability movement is meant to regulate them. It's meant to kind of blow them out of yourself. You don't want them to persist, and if you can help it, right, that's what a stability movement is for, you shock them out of the system. That's the intention here anyway. Okay, in terms of finding them, right, what are the instabilities? How can you send them someplace? How can you manipulate them? They're not really tangible, are they? Some of them are, some of them aren't. Like the low blood sugar thing, just have some carbs, or deal with the way your body reacts to that circumstance, and that will alleviate that issue. A lot of the times, instability can just be dealt with by maybe sitting down and taking a rest, but if we don't have that ability, we don't have that circumstantial alleviation, then we're going to need to deal with this problem head on, and this is the only tool to do so. So you're going to need to isolate the instabilities that you're feeling, and we're going to utilize them as components in this build, in this formulation, because that's what it is. It's a stability movement. It's a singular movement that shocks the stabilities out of your body. Not all of them, but the majority of them. The ideal is that you shock more instabilities out of your body than you incur from said formulation. Generally, the answer is rather temporary, but it is there. It does help. I find it helps me. You're going to want to isolate the instabilities that you're dealing with. One of them is intolerance, so you have that essence intolerance. What does that feel like? You're going to incur some resistance to your essence generation. It's not going to, like, if a smooth flow were to be, woo, you know, it would be, it wouldn't want to go through. So you need to understand that, inflect on that, and if you can, isolate it, feel it, right? It's right around here. And you want to wrap a ball of essence around that. Yeah, you can do that. You can just directional control the crap out of it. So that's what you're going to do. You're going to directional control a ball around that intolerance, and you're going to try to directionally send it where we're going to talk about in a moment. That's just one thing. We're going to pair it with a lot of red absolute. A lot of red absolute. We're going to build that red absolute in our lower core. Everything is going to be sent right here in the sacral area, right above Sorpu core. Not Sorpu core. Traditionally, Sorpu core is down here in the legs, you know, hamstrings, legs area, but right above it, right kind of in the middle here, right there. That's where we're sending everything to, and we're gonna set it all down at the same time when we do have that movement. But right now, we're isolating everything. We're pairing it with that red absolute. We're sending it to the sacral area. We're building up that blue absolute. We're sending it to the sacral area. And again, you're building up that essence isolation around that essence intolerance, if you have it. Sounds a little bit counterintuitive. Oh yeah, you have essence intolerance, generate more essence. Well, it's not like you can't. Everything associated with active state is associated with essence generally, you know, so it's most prevalent. Co-energy is going to be essence, right? Not always, but mostly. So other intolerances, or other instabilities, excuse me. The low blood sugar thing, you can't really isolate that. That's, I mean, you could, but that's your entire being, right? So the shock is going to helpfully alleviate that temporarily, but not permanently. An instability movement in a wholesome sense is going to empower you slightly by utilizing all of these different components and sending them somewhere and kind of bursting them is really the purpose here. And in doing that, you're going to have that overture effect for a very temporary time frame. So that will alleviate the low blood sugar symptoms for a very temporary time frame. But it'll come right back. So if you're having low blood sugar issues, if you're having that shakiness, you should probably eat something. I think that's the last I'm going to talk about that. Moving on to other instabilities such as if you're dealing with high levels of exposure because you're utilizing high levels of active state or repetitive low levels of active state, and I do mean very repetitive, we're talking about like a full day here, you're going to have that high level of exposure. And yes, that is something that you can isolate, you can send to the sacral area, and you can burst it out of your system. You can shock it. Now, I don't want to say away, but you change the affinity of it. You depending on the person, you're going to take that exposure and you're going to send it down to the sacral area, and when you're ready, you're going to have that stability movement and burst it, shock it out of your system. But again, it's not going to go out of your system, it's going to just change affinities. What does that mean? I can't define that in this video because A, it doesn't belong here, and B, it's not the same for everybody. So moving on, if you have high levels of residual, again, from lots of active state use, lots of unused formulational catalyzation, essentially what I mean is that if you are trying to formulate a lot and it's not working, and you keep getting interrupted, and you keep failing or buckling, you're going to have a lot of residual. So you want to try to utilize it properly, and if you can't, then the only answer is to do a stability movement. In most cases, right? Nothing's really generalized for everybody. So that's for residual. You want to isolate it and again send it down to the sacral area if that's a component that you can utilize. Another instance of instability would be like muscle fatigue. That's a great one, because although you can't isolate it and move it somewhere, because if your bicep is fatigued, you can't send that down to the sacral area. And you can't take the lactic acid buildup and send it. That's not, no. But what you can do is you can provide your body an override for those fatigued muscles through the bursting action of this formulation. Again, it's very temporary. Very temporary. We're talking about like seconds. But it will actually aid you in whatever physical pursuits you may have. But see, that right there is just its own thing. That's got its own name. We're not going to get into that. We're going to need to define that another day. Muscle fatigue, yeah, that's pretty much all there. In terms of mental fatigue, that's a separate instance that we would address with something different. But it can be slightly addressed here with a stability movement. Can you isolate that? Can you send it somewhere? Absolutely. Would you want to send mental negative mental energy down to your sacral area, no, you wouldn't want to do that. There's something separate for that. We're not going to get into that right now. We'll get into that another time on a separate video. But yeah, physical, mental. If you have too much of like a life energy, like a negative life energy, a negative social, a negative environmental build-up in your system, and you don't want it, if it's too prevalent and it's affecting you negatively and you're incurring too much of a limitational aspect from it, then you can definitely take that, send it down to the sacral area with everything else, and prepare to burst it out. And it definitely does work like that. Life energy is very transient. It moves very sporadically in direction, but very like smoothly. You know, it doesn't trickle. It just flows from place to place. And so you can definitely get rid of it. Some social life energies are going to persist. Some atmospheric life energies are going to persist. Things don't just go away like that and stay away. It depends on what you're dealing with. I'm just trying to touch base on everything here. What else? I mean, I can't be expected to go over every single circumstantial instability. Just know that some things can be waived, other things can't. They'll persist. So just really think about what it is that you're trying to deal with and ask yourself, does it seem like something that you'll be able to override? Does it seem like something that you'll be able to kind of burst out or shock out of your system? And that's the intention here with the stability movement. So you're gonna, again, we're gonna send all this energy, what have you, that is a problem, down to the sacral area. Right? Right? Okay, we're gonna hold it there. And we're going to prepare a little bit of blue absolute essence in our skull region. Close our eyes, focus on all of this stuff going on right here. It's all prepared now at this point, or at least it should be. And at this point in the formulation, with all of it prepared here, you're going to take this stance, right? Nice solid stance. Build everything up here, build everything up here. Hopefully it's not too much. If you're building up too much, you're going to have a hell of a buckle. You just want to focus on some things at a time. If you have to do a few of these, that's fine. But again, you don't want to incur more instabilities than you shock out of your system. So you're going to build it all up, and you're going to get a ki ready. Is that how you say that? Kia? You're going to get that ready, and you're going to send it all down. Send it all down. Straight to your feet. Send it straight out of your body, straight down. That's why a lot of people get this confused with a solidity movement, because that's what you also do with a solidity movement if it's being utilized a certain way, like in a falling circumstance or like in a Sorpu based build. But you're going to send it all down and try to shock ground it out. So you're shocking it out and you're grounding it out. And it looks just like this. And that's it. You're just sending it down. And it's going, you're going to feel like a big shock here, right? And a lot of it's not going to want to leave that area. It's going to kind of just sit, be stoic, if you will. But you want to send it out. You want to try to send it out and shock your body outwards. So down and out to the best of your ability. And if it doesn't work, then nothing happens. Do it again. If it does work, well, might not need to do it again. Maybe you will need to do it again. It depends. You know, apply or deny. All right, so that's stability movement.